And here we go. Wales. These are the words, the English words to the Welsh national anthem. So let us listen to the Welsh national anthem. Wales, proud land of song. Talk is by Doug Schneider. And I went out to a Facebook group called Proud to be Welsh, and I asked the Welsh people, what should Americans know about Wales? So here is your question. I know this is a recording, so you can answer. I won't hear you, but what do the Welsh people want Americans to know about Wales? Two things. This t-shirt says the first thing, they want you to know that Wales is not part of England. And the second thing they want you to know as Americans is that it is a country. It is a country, yes. So where would we find Wales? Here in Europe, over on the western edge of an island off the coast of Europe. That island is mostly the United Kingdom, and you'll see Wales there in magenta. And here's a little biblical history about God making countries, made England, Ireland, and Scotland, and then, well, finished with Wales, no mistakes there. And here is a nice picture of Wales, and what you can see, it has quite a bit of coastline, nearly 1,700 miles of coastline, and that coastline is rugged and picturesque. So let's take a look here. The coastline of Wales, the little former lighthouse, and a nice arch. Now, the subtitle is Proud Land of Song, and Wales is known for their male voice choirs, and to be born Welsh means that you have music in your blood. So we're going to go to this television show, which has, believe it or not, the same judge that we have in America's Got Talent. And we're going to listen to some Welsh young men sing. And they came in third on Britain's Got Talent. Let's visit some streets, because what you'll notice is that street signs in Wales are in two languages, English and Welsh. Welcome to Wales. And through traffic, head to your left. Looks like it'll go to a castle. And here are a number of tourist things you may want to see in a particular part of Wales and get some tourist information. So we have English and Welsh. And let's talk a little bit about the Welsh language. And it's a superpower. Yes, it's a superpower. And we'll get a little bit of detail about it. But first, let's listen to some Welsh singing.
Felly cariad, cariad, seva, Davi, oh, seva, Davi, oh, seva, seva, Davi, seva, Davi.
And unlike the song that the young fellow sang on Britain's Got Talent, this is not an old Welsh song. This is Stand By Me. You just heard it in Welsh. And here is Tolkien's comment about this language. It's the senior language of the men of Britain, and it's beautiful. And this guy is not Welsh. He's South African. So that is a real compliment when an author of that stature calls this language a beautiful language. It's a Celtic language, which makes it one of the oldest languages in Europe. And the Celts used to have quite a bit of territory, but you can see they've been pushed over to the west over the centuries. And the remaining Celtic languages are Scottish, Irish, Manx on the Isle of Man, Welsh, which we just heard a little singing, Cornish, and Breton. Cornish is interesting in that it died off and they revived a dead language. All right, so those are the Celtic languages, and here is Welsh.
The Welsh, though, call themselves Cymry, and their language Cymraeg.
Okay, now let's get a little structure of the Welsh sentence. English is subject, verb, object, SVO, but this is VSO, verb, subject, object. So Sean saw a red dragon becomes saw Sean a dragon red. You'll notice that the adjective comes after the noun. So that is a bit of a change from spoken modern English. But the spelling in this sentence, if you try to look up this word dragon, D-D-R-A-I-G, it's not in the Welsh dictionary. And by the way, Thomas Jefferson had a Welsh dictionary in Monticello in Virginia. He wouldn't find it under D-D-R-A-I-G. He would find it under D-R-A-I-G. This means that Welsh spelling changes according to the use of the word, and the pronunciation changes according to the word in front. And here you can see for red in the dictionary, it's C-O-C-H, while in this sentence, spelled correctly in the sentence, it's G-O-C-H. So poor Thomas Jefferson would have a bit of a problem with spelling Welsh. Now, Welsh has vowels, and like us in English, you have long vowels and short vowels. So that is not new to you, but they have a few more letters. And some of these letters in the alphabet are actually written as two letters, for you can see there's a single D and there's a double D. Those are different letters. R is highlighted here because the first R is a rolling R, while the second R is an aspirated R. And again, the pronunciation, the spelling changes depending on what the environment is for the word in Welsh. So let's listen to some people speak in Welsh. Here is a woman. She happened to be a city councillor in a city in Wales.
Oh, y safonau iaith hyn. Maen nhw mor gymleth. Ti'n modd, sa'n deall nhw. Ond y syniad yw bod neb arall yn deall nhw fyd, t'wel?
And we'll listen to two people talking in a pub here.
A mae siŵr ti'n cael laff gyda Ian a Derek ar set. Wyt ti'n reit starstruck yn...
Yeah, ar y dechrau, they're just back and surreal, really. And
they were speaking in a pub in Wales. But you could go to a pub in Patagonia. Yes, Patagonia. And you could hear Welsh spoken in a town. There you see the Welsh spelling of the town. That's southern Argentina. Yes, there are 50,000 inhabitants with Welsh blood in this town, and 5,000 of them can speak Welsh. So you can go to Argentina and hear some Welsh if you would like. Now, Wales wins the award for the town with the longest name. And there is the name of the town. I am not going to pronounce it for you, but here it is spelled out for you along a brick wall in the town. And here is the sign welcoming you if you're coming by railroad, or railway, as they would say in Britain. And here's that town spelled out all as one word and then broken into syllables for you. But we're going to ask this guy. He is a weatherman, and he's going to tell you, or he's going to pronounce the name of that town for you.
Now today we had a big contrast in temperature across the UK, just 12 degrees over coastal parts of eastern England with cloudy skies, but in the sunshine in northwest Wales at RAF Mona, just up the road from Llanfair Pwllgwyn, Gellgorgera Chwindrobwll, Llantysilio Gogogwch, the temperature got to 21 Celsius, that's 70 in Fahrenheit.
Well, that guy did such a good job. Let's ask him to pronounce that town again.
Now today we had a big contrast in temperature across the UK, just 12 degrees over coastal parts of eastern England with cloudy skies, but in the sunshine in northwest Wales at RAF Mona, just up the road from Llanfair Pwllgwyn, Gellgorgera Chwindrobwll, Llantysilio Gogogwch, the temperature got to 21 Celsius, that's 70 in Fahrenheit.
Okay, let's listen to some Welsh music. That was a little sort of children's song sung by a male voice choir, a Welsh one, of course. Well, let's look at prehistoric Wales. And this is a burial chamber. And I've been to Britain, I've been to Wales, and what amazes me is there are prehistoric things that just sit in somebody's yard or in somebody's field out in the countryside. They're just there. And you can see some roofs peeking out from behind this burial chamber. It's just there. No big deal. Same, here's another burial chamber. And again, this is in some guy's field. You can see his sheep there in the background. He just has a prehistoric burial chamber. This is like, what, 3000 BC? And it's in his field. There's nothing, no big deal about it. This set of standing stones is also in a field. It does have a little fence around it. And there again in somebody's field, you can see it looks like cattle over on the left. They're just there. So standing stones, those are, of course, what Americans, when they think of prehistoric Britain, they think mostly of standing stones. Here, these stones aren't in somebody's field. They're in a city. They're in the middle of Cardiff, in a city park. Now, when Americans think of standing stones, they think of Stonehenge. And we have some news. 2021, someone looked at the mystery of Stonehenge. What is the mystery? The mystery is those stones didn't come from that part of England. They just don't match the geology of that part of England. They must have come from somewhere else. And someone has found, or is theorizing, that they found where they came from, and that they came from the Preseli Hills of Western Wales and got dismantled and moved a mere 175 miles to England. Yes, that is what they are saying now. Over on the left is the remnants where the stones used to be in Wales. That's on the left. 175 miles away on the right is Stonehenge with Welsh stones. Well, since we're back in prehistory, let's go into some American prehistory. And our prehistory is more recent than the Welsh prehistory. And we're going to go to 530 AD in Kentucky. And this is where King Arthur II, not the first, King Arthur II, was murdered. Yes, in the town of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, in the year 530 AD. This is the story. This is the legend of King Richard II. Here is a sword in a stone, just to keep with the Arthurian theme in Kentucky. And since it was King Arthur, you get a round table. right, in Kentucky. He was murdered by Native Americans, and the body was mummified and sent back to Ireland. That was 530 AD. Let's look at something more recent. This is Prince Madoc. Apparently, things got pretty hot for him in Wales, and he decided to leave Wales by boat and followed the Gulf Stream. So here is what the prince would have followed in the year 1170 AD, and that would have taken him right to Mobile Bay and 1170. And Mobile has a sign for you telling you some things that may make you think this is not just legend, but this is real history. For example, there were Roman coins found in Tennessee. They got to get there somewhere, the Roman coins. And there are talks, there's people speak of white Indians found along the Missouri River. Okay, so they had to come from somewhere. And forts that were built here resemble the forts of Wales in 800 AD. So this is Prince Madoc, 1170 AD. And there is talk of Welsh-speaking Indians. Who talked about them? Well, a Cherokee elder spoke to the governor of Tennessee. This is James Sevier, the first governor of Tennessee. He had this conversation, and the Cherokee elder told the governor that there are Welsh-speaking Indians in Alabama. But we also saw from that sign there are white Indians along the Missouri River. So Thomas Jefferson had heard this, Welsh-speaking Indian tribes, and he wrote to Meriwether Lewis of Lewis and Clark and speaks of searching for the Welsh Native Americans said to be up the Missouri. Okay, well, this is my favorite book on the Lewis and Clark expedition, Stephen Ambrose. And what does this book have to say about Jefferson and the Welsh-speaking Indians? He said he instructed the Lewis and Clark expedition to find them, find those descendants of the Madoc Welsh Indians going up the Mississippi River. And Lewis and Clark went up the Mississippi River. They got to North Dakota and were astonished. They were astonished at what they saw in North Dakota. They saw these boats. These boats are found only two places in the world. One is with the Mandan Indians of North Dakota. And guess where the second place is? You bet it, you got it, Wales, that country with nearly 1,700 miles of coastline. So you can take this as legend, you can take this as history, but certainly Thomas Jefferson had heard and asked Lewis and Clark to investigate. Now, nowadays, if you want to see a little bit of a tribute to Wales, you go to the Washington Monument, and if you can somehow get up 550 feet above ground level, you can read some Welsh. Yes, right there in the monument is a tribute to the Welsh people that helped found America. Yes, helped sign the Declaration of Independence. Yes, yes, yes. And this little plaque says in English, "My language, my land, my nation, Wales forever," on the Washington Monument. Well, the Welsh signed the Declaration of Independence, and there's Welsh blood in a lot of American presidents. Let's go to John Adams. He can trace back to this little town in Wales, which means also his son, John Quincy, can trace back to Wales. Thomas Jefferson, no wonder he was interested in Welsh-speaking Indians, because he can trace back one of his lines to Wales. And of course, he could read about the Welsh language in his dictionary in Monticello. James Monroe, his grandfather, was from Wales. Abraham Lincoln can trace back to this little town in Wales, so small, nobody's heard of it. And James Garfield, well, maybe he's a little bit of a publicist. His family says they go back to a castle, not to a little village, but to a castle in Wales. Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt actually was the first really American president because he's got a whole bunch of different ethnic strains, but one of those strains is a Welsh Quaker family. And here's Richard Nixon, tracing back to another little town, and Barack Obama going back to Ainsley, which is a large town or a small city. And he is the first US president to actually set foot in Wales. Now, in Congress, we have a caucus of Congress people, both Democrats and Republicans, who are friends of Wales. So we have people whose Welsh blood says that the United States needs to think about Wales and Wales needs. All right, let's have a little more music. And this music is to torment any grandparent who's listening to my talk, because your grandchildren, especially your granddaughters, would have made you watch Frozen a whole bunch of times. Here we go.
Gad ti fynd, mae'n rhaid I mi rwyddhau hi nawr. Gad ti fynd, trwy a choedwys yn gleb mawr. Does dim ots da fi, beth wna'n nhw dweud. Gad I storm barhau, doedd o oer byth yn trafod I mi unrhyw ffordd.
Okay. Sorry, grandparents. We'll go on to patron saint. And the patron saint of Wales is Saint David. And this window, the stained glass window, is in California, in San Francisco. And you know it's Saint David because he's got this on his shoulder. It's a 6th century saint, by the way. And he's got a dove on his shoulder because the story is that when he spoke to crowds, a dove would land on his shoulder and he would be able to levitate, and more people could hear him when he was levitated. And St. David's Day is March 1st. The national symbols of Wales. These women they are going whole hog Wales. They're wearing red like I am, and they are dressed up as daffodils holding leeks. That's right. That's about as Welsh as you can get. The daffodil and the leek are both national symbols of the nation of Wales. And here is a fan. He's not doing an inflatable leek. He's doing a real leek. He probably found the biggest one in the market to take to this sporting event. Now, if you read Shakespeare, every time a Welsh person appears in Shakespeare, they're wearing a hat, and on their hat is a leek. So here is a British soldier who is wearing a leek. This is the smallest leek you could find in the market. And here is Prince Charles, and he's got a leek in his cap. And we're talking about symbols. Here is the red dragon, a symbol of Wales, which you can proudly display on your skin if you like, or get a stuffed one to give to your kid, or go visit one made out of old motorcycle and automobile parts, the red dragon. And on Christmas Eve, keep your eyes in the sky, because the Welsh, whoops, I missed that picture, because actually the Welsh believe that those dragons will guide Santa's sleigh. We're now looking at 4 Welsh political parties, and you'll notice they're 20th century political parties, because this is when the Welsh start to worry about their local culture being overwhelmed by the rest of Britain. So you have 1925, a party that's still around that is concerned about preserving the Welsh language. The same thing in 1962. But in 2016, something happens in Britain. There is a vote, and 51% of Britain votes to leave the European Union, and the Welsh don't like it. The Welsh want to remain in the European Union, and the way to do that is to become independent. So you have two parties here that are for independence. The first one, when the vote was taken, and the second one, what looked like Brexit, is really going to happen. So those are some Welsh parties. Well, we saw Prince Charles. He's the Prince of Wales, and here he is being invested as the Prince of Wales in 1969. So he gets the crown, and then wearing the crown, he speaks to the crowd. And let's listen to Prince Charles speaking to the crowd.
Yn eiliad wedi fy nghyffwrdd yn dywys, a gallaf eich sicrhau fy mod wedi cymryd sylwi o'r gobeithion am lygwyd anddyn nhw.
So it's 1969. This poor guy becomes the heir apparent to the throne. And as you know, he is still the heir apparent to the throne. So here he is, having been invested as the Prince of Wales in 1969. Well, Wales, got to talk about castles, because here's a castle, it's 1263 AD, because it has more castles per square mile than any other country in Europe. So here's a castle in the year 1263. And here's a castle, pretty big one, the year 1283. Oh, here's a castle, and this is pretty big. It's 1289. I think I'm noticing a pattern here that stone fortifications became needed, and this time the 13th century. And of course, these castles were very good to defend yourselves. Back in the 13th century, they would become useless when cannon became invented. But here we are in the 13th century with this castle, and a little bit, sorry, that was the 14th century. Here's the 13th century with this castle, a little bit of a ruin on a picturesque bluff. And this one goes back a ways as well. More castles per square mile than any other country. Let's look at some traditional architecture. We're out in the countryside, so you're going to use the stones. There's stones for the walls and stones for the buildings. In this case, it's a stone cottage. This one is a stone barn. But this one is a cob farmhouse. Now, Americans don't know what cob is. Cob is mud. This is a mud farmhouse. Cob is a mixture of this particular ratio of dirt to straw and amount of water to create what becomes a durable material. That building has to go back to the 1500s or the 1600s, and it's still standing. And there are many cob buildings still standing in Wales and in the rest of Britain. But row houses, look at these cheerful, cheerful row houses. They're in Cardiff, overlooking Cardiff Bay. And this caught my eye. There's a church, I believe, and the rectory to a church near the bay in Cardiff. Modern architecture, well, I was blown away. I was blown away. Just look at this. It's a cancer center. A cancer center. Just think how uplifting it is, even though you've been diagnosed with cancer, you're getting treated for cancer, to come to a wonderful modern building like this that just is going to lift your spirits. It's going to lift your spirits. So I really, really like this building. And there are lots of other buildings in Wales that I like. This is the Central Library in Cardiff. This is an auditorium. It's at the Millennium Centre in Wales, and it features stone, so different kinds of stone, which is a native building material for Wales. And this guy, this is apartments. Okay, we're not going to use that word when we're in Wales. We're going to call them flats, although they might be condos, but they're on the river. And Cardiff uses the river for public transportation. They have boats going up and down the river all the time, the same way it has buses going up and down the roads. Now, whoa, the Royal Welsh College. That's modern. That's quite flashy. And here it is, sign in English and in Welsh. Now we're going to go inside the Royal Welsh College. And there's a sign pointing to the Dame Shirley Bassey Studio. Have you heard of her? There she is. She is Welsh and she sings. So she's going to sing for you a tune that you've heard before.
Goldfinger, he's the man with the Midas touch, a spider's touch.
Yes, a spider's touch, because there'll be a web that'll pull you in. Well, I did get to go to Parliament. And in Welsh, that's the Synod. And the Parliament is a new building. It's a new building. And again, using Welsh materials, this is a wooden center focal point in the Parliament building. And here you see it from down below. You see people sitting in chairs having coffee. There's a coffee shop there. But it's not the wood that impressed me. It was the glass. The Parliament Hall has a glass ceiling, thick glass that I could walk on. I could walk on. There's my shoe right there. Just walk out over the Parliament chamber, and if it were in session, I could tell whether somebody was playing on their cell phone or falling asleep or listening to the speaker or shuffling papers. It's all open. The idea is that Parliament should be open, and you can't hide because your constituents are standing above you on the ceiling looking down at you. The same thing with conference rooms here in the Senate. The walls are made of glass. There's no smoke-filled room. It is all open. Now, you talk about Wales, you have to talk about collieries, which is the word for coal mines. And this was a huge source of income for Wales in the 19th century and early 20th century. And thanks to coal, we had an industrial revolution. And here are some Welsh miners. As you know, it's a dirty job. You'll see their faces are dark. Often they wouldn't bother to wash their face until they got home after work. Here are the big coal areas in Wales marked on this map. And this is what a colliery looks like at the surface, with these towers that pull the elevators up and down to bring the product up and down and to bring the coal miners up and down. And here are two people enjoying a cigarette after having worked in the mine. And what kind of coal was used on this ship? I think you recognize the ship. It's the Titanic. Welsh coal for the Titanic. Now, these mines are out in the countryside. So you have mining villages and you have the miners' houses built in rows like this. And the first thing you'll notice is that they are pretty much equal and they're side by side. And some of them are painted up in pleasant colors. That's partly to get away from the grimness of working in a mine, is to come home with a nice colored house. And here is another village, and you can see this mining village. You have the colorfulness in the house, and they're usually in a valley with the hills beyond. And here's another Welsh village in a valley with the hills beyond. I was driven around Wales by a friend, Marjorie, and she talked about the miners lived grim lives, but they could always lift their hearts by lifting their eyes to the wonderful hills that surrounded their villages. There's a wonderful hill. And Marjorie said, you can always lift your eyes to the beauty of the Welsh hills. But now we're going to have a little music about coal mining. And it's sung by David Alexander. He left school, he quit school at age 16 to join his father in the mines in Wales.
At the age of 16 years, with my father close to tears, as he vowed never again to send his sons to the dark recess of the mines, where you age before your time, and the coal dust lies heavy on your lungs.
And that song, believe it or not, in 1990 charted up as number 11 on the hit parade in Britain in 1990 at some point, about the Welsh mines. Well, let's meet some famous Welsh people. Here is an actor, and he's going to talk about his childhood in Wales.
I had a very happy childhood. We were pretty poor. It was during the Depression. My father was a miner, and all my brothers except one, my younger brother, were miners. And they all got out of the mines, except the very oldest one, who loved the mines so much that I couldn't bribe him out. I couldn't get him. There was no way I could get him out. And he stayed in until the bitter end.
Stayed in until the bitter end, the older brother of this actor, who obviously had enough money to get his other brothers out of the mines. Who is this actor, this Welsh guy? That's Richard Burton. All right. Oh, music in your blood. We're going to have a Welshman sing, and Ed Sullivan's going to introduce him to you.
Here is, from Wales, Tom Jones, and he's magnificent.
And when Ed Sullivan says you are magnificent to an audience of millions of Americans on a Sunday night, your career is going to get a boost. Okay, so we now actually have a psychological condition named after him. This guy, poor guy, has this song in his head, this earworm, and he can't stop singing. And the doctor says that's the Tom Jones syndrome. Is it common? It's not unusual. Okay, let's meet this Welsh poet. And I hope you know his name. That's Dylan Thomas. And best known for a poem called Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
And here is an actress. She is Welsh.
You famously, for us, you know, you're from Wales. From Wales. Yeah, Wales. Yeah.
And her name is Catherine Zeta-Jones. And here is an actor. He is from Wales. And one of his quotes, "Today is the tomorrow I was worried about yesterday." Do you recognize that face? That actor is Anthony Hopkins. Well, Welsh famous people, Welsh famous dogs, the corgi. Here is this dog with these short legs. And I still find it hard to believe that these are herding dogs. They're just so small, but they are strong, athletic, and they do herd. And notice they are companionable without being needy. Tell that to my dog, Sierra, about they are not needy, because Sierra knows about neediness. And who enjoys corgis? Queen Elizabeth II. She's owned over 30 of them in her lifetime. Well, Americans, they ask the name of something Welsh to eat, they'll say Welsh rarebit, which actually does come from Wales, the original recipe. There is an example, toast, cheese, mustard, and it's called cospoby. And it was been in Wales at least since the 1500s. And this is very popular, and it's so popular that the stories told about God got tired of all these Welsh people in heaven. They were just creating so much of a mess. He wanted to get rid of them. So he told St. Peter, get rid of all the Welsh people in heaven. And St. Peter went outside the pearly gates and yelled out, "Cause Poby," and the Welshmen all left the pearly gates, and he slammed them shut. So the Welsh were evicted from heaven. Little music. Male voice choir. Well, some more food and drink. Walked by this window, and in stained glass, it says brains. They've got brains in this Welsh window. And it turns out that that's the name of a Welsh beer. So you have to get used to it. You say, I'll have a brains, a pint of brains, and that is beer in Wales. Welsh cakes, they are sort of celebration often used for St. David's Day. But here's a lovely little hedgehog, this cute little fellow. And if you like hedgehogs, you just might like hedgehog potato crisps. Well, if you're American, you would enjoy hedgehog potato chips. But this product is for sale, hedgehog flavored potato chips, and originally came out as a joke. And the company got sued because the Welsh public realized these were not actually flavored with hedgehogs. They're hedgehog potato crisps, but they're not made with hedgehogs. They were made with pork fat. And whoa, this meant a court case because you have inflamed the Welsh public with this false claim that this hedgehog flavored. So the company decided they would talk to people in Wales who eat hedgehogs. And these would be the gypsies. They call them travelers over there. And the gypsies eat baked hedgehogs. And a flavoring company just went to these gypsies and came up with a flavor that the gypsies said matched the flavor of a hedgehog exactly. So now the hedgehog chips are flavored like a real hedgehog. And you can probably get them on Amazon. And where did this photo come from? Museum of Crisps. That tells you how high on the chart of favorite foods crisps are. There's an entire museum devoted to crisps. Now, here's a question for you. I know this is being recorded, so I can't hear your answer, but I'll show you a guy who is cheering for a Welsh team. And there he is. He's got the red dragon painted on his face. He's wearing red. He's got a flag or a banner of some kind. And what sport is he watching? Here are your choices. Is he watching soccer, rugby, tennis, or cricket? He's Welsh. Which one of these is he watching? The answer is rugby. Big deal in Wales. A big deal. There are even stadiums built just for rugby. And their nationalism comes out when the Wales national team plays rugby. Here is a rugby ball painted up with the red dragon. And here is a statement that probably most Welsh people will agree to. Support two teams, the Welsh team, and whoever's playing against England. I'm going to look at marriage customs, going to mention those because I married a man with Welsh blood. And the love spoon is a tradition that the love spoon is given as a token when you propose marriage. It's a token of your affection and your intention for your loved one. And they are carved usually with hearts because they are love spoons. Here is one nice love spoon. Here is a choice of love spoons. And I happened to have a love spoon. I was given this by some Welsh visitors many years ago, and kept it, and it became handy when I proposed marriage. And that is the spoon. You can see the dragon up above and the heart. Now, the Welsh in St. Louis. Well, Dressel's Welsh Pub, as you know, it sadly is closed at the moment, but it is Welsh. There's the dragon, and here's what it looks like from the outside. And here is Dressel's on the inside, and their plans are to open in the fall. So hopefully that will happen. This is the place where I had laver bread. This is a seaweed, sort of in the form of a, not quite a tortilla, but flattened out. And over time, I've noticed that Dressel's has changed its menu to be less and less Welsh, but it is proud to be a Welsh pub. And the same with Llewellyn's. They are a Welsh pub with more than one location. So you'd have to check to see which location is open if you want to go to Llewellyn's. And they again have anglicized their menu. It's not even Welsh rarebit anymore. It's some sort of cheese dish. But if you go to the tap room, you'll see Welsh rarebit on that menu. Anyway, those are two pubs here in St. Louis. There's the exterior of one of the Llewellyn's pubs, and here is the interior. And you'll notice, unfortunately, they do sell English beer, and that's just to make income, not because they like England. Well, the Welsh are a very proud nation, and they show it. They show it. They are proud to be Welsh. And here's a Welsh girl letting you know that she's ready for anything. And this guy, he is so proud. He's got a giant tattoo, takes up his entire forearm. And you can be born British, but if you're lucky, God has made you Welsh as well as British. Let's have a little music. So I hope you heard the pride in that and the great strength of that song. We are still here. The Welsh are still here. Now, this is what you are to remember. What do the Welsh people want Americans to know about Wales? Two things. Wales is not part of England, and Wales is a country. So that is what you are to take away from this talk. Wales, proud land of song. So this is being recorded in June. This is Doug Schneider. And if you're actually, you don't have to be from St. Louis. I'm giving some talks. They'll be by Zoom. So you can check with our continuing ed department at the St. Louis Community College. And because it's by Zoom, you can attend my talk on Route 66 in nearby Illinois. Check that on the website for continuing ed. Or my talk about the town where I live. The town was built in 1 year, the single year of 1903, and was built by a giant glass company. And it is a company town, pretty much like those mining villages in Wales, except the houses were all separate rather than side by side in a row. And nowadays, we were honored with a film being made in Valley Park. It was considered the ideal location for a film about uranium-crazed zombies. So you can come by Zoom to this talk in the continuing ed. I'm also going to give a talk. This is a statue in Montpellier, France. And you can see it's an old woman. on the right and a young woman supporting her on the left. So here is the old woman on the right, and here is the young woman on the left. This is allegorical. It's an allegorical statue. The woman on the right is France, and the woman on the left is Missouri. Missouri saved France. The year was 1869, and I'm going to tell you about it if you sign up for the History of Missouri Wines and Wineries coming up this